Welcome to Sand Stories, the platform created to take a closer look at the most overused and undervalued resource on Earth. We work to find solutions to the global sand crisis by building connections within science, policy, and industry. My name is Kiran Pereira, and I'm the founder of Sand Stories. In today's episode, we speak to Joanna Thomson, Trustee of the Goodwin Sands Conservation Trust. The Trust aims to conserve, protect, and improve the natural environment of the Goodwin Sands for the benefit of the public. In this video, we speak about the controversial decision to dredge the Goodwin Sands and what's at stake. We also explore the plans of the Trust for the coming months. Very warm welcome to this call, Joanna. Thank you so much for making time to speak with us. It would be fantastic to introduce you to our audience, and would be wonderful to hear a little bit more about you and how you got involved in this. Tell us more about you and the Trust.
Okay, well, I got involved because I live opposite the Goodwin Sands, and I've lived here for 25 years, and they've always been really part of our life here. We visited them probably 6 or 7 times. The first time was with the hovercraft in 1995, when we thought blissfully that we'd be able to do it every year. And in fact, that was the last year the hovercraft went. So there was a bit of a lull, and then we went, I suppose, probably 10 years ago, and we've been going regularly ever since. They were obviously very much part of the Deal community, but now they're sort of rather out of sight is out of mind. And that's really what the Trust is, what we're trying to do, is to bring them back into the collective awareness, the social memory, whatever you want to call it, for people.
Help us understand what's at stake. Why is what's at stake with the proposed dredging at Goodwin Sands?
Well, I don't know if you know much about the sands themselves. They lie about 3-4 miles off the East Kent coast. They're 2 sandbanks, and they stretch for about 10 miles from St Margaret's Bay in the south to Ramsgate in the north. They're about 1 and 2 miles wide. They create an anchorage called the Downs, which is a shelter, an area of calm water between the sands and the coast. And they act as a natural breakwater, as well as containing all these thousands of 2,000 recorded shipwrecks. So there's a lot of heritage out there. It's like an aviation museum from World War II. There's Spitfires, Dorniers, Hurricanes, Defiants, all these airplanes which are out there as well. So Dover Harbour Board want to take 2 metres off the top of an area about 2.5 square kilometres. And they're saying it's only a tiny amount. But if you sort of lay that out on the land, how much that would be, it's a huge amount of sand to be taking away from our marine environment, with everything that's in it, the heritage that's in it. And of course, nobody really knows what will happen to the coast once they do start lowering the level of the sandbank.
So, as you mentioned, it's just 2 square kilometers, right? Is there a possibility of the sands being regenerated?
No, that's absolutely, there's no choice of that. There, in 1954, a chap called R.L. Clowett, we don't know what nationality he is, he did a lot of research on the Goodwins, and he concluded they're actually a closed system, so the sand just rotates in an anti-clockwise direction, being pushed by the currents and the tides and the eddies. So no sand goes in and out. Back in between 1976 and 1999, Dover Harbour Board, the Channel Tunnel, the Ramsgate Port, they removed about 10 million tonnes. And this is part of their reason. They've said, oh, we did it before, we can do it again. But, that was before the Marine and Coastal Access Act. It was before there's regulation, impacts assessments, surveys. It was before we were aware of the importance of our heritage, our underwater cultural heritage, rising sea levels, climate change, the sinking coast. It was a completely different world. And they think, well, they did it before, we can do it again.
But this is protected habitat, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And actually, it means absolutely useless. So it was designated as a marine conservation zone July 2018, and we thought, wow, that'll really help. But they've completely roughshod over it. If you can dredge a protected habitat, what is the point of these MCZs? It means absolutely nothing. And in fact, we took the Marine Management Organisation, we took them to court in the form of a judicial review. And one of our points was that they hadn't assessed the full impact of the removal of the volume of sand. And Natural England just said, well, the habitat, no, they didn't. The fauna will recover within 5 years. And so it's not a problem. And we lost our case. I mean, it's iniquitous. It really is.
I see. I'm trying to understand what kind of alternatives were looked at. Surely I'm sure the Harbour Board took into consideration several alternatives and came to the conclusion that they were not suitable. Do you have any idea of?
Yeah, no, and I had another look at the impact statement, which is quite interesting. So they had 4 alternatives. The first one was the Goodwins, which was number 1. The second was land-based, terrestrial quarries. The third one was marine-based, so other commercial marine aggregate dredging sites or spoil that was removed from other dredging programs, in ports and things, and then also recycled sources. So they screened out the recycled element very quickly. They just said there wasn't enough of the same stuff available within an economically viable area. And then
I'm sorry, what would that be? What would be an economic?
I don't know. They didn't really go into much depth about it. We think maybe it was, rubber tyres, or they'd been knocking down quite a few old buildings in Dover, and whether it was the rubble from that. But they said, probably quite rightly, you have to, if you're filling in an area to be used for land reclamation, you have to have the same, all the infill has to be the same stuff, which I can understand. But we were actually approached by a local company, who had a whole load of shale spoil from the collieries. There are a lot of collieries around here. And they came to us and said, well, now, how about this as an idea? We've got enough spoil. But it would have meant thousands and thousands of lorry movements into Dover, and we just felt we couldn't really condone that. There is an idea, like got a new MP, and she's thinking, the new Dartford Tunnel, there'll be lots of spoil for that. And she was thinking, well, we need to have a sort of national policy that spoil that is dug out from somewhere needs to be kept to be used for, projects elsewhere. They're talking about just using it to make another bird sanctuary. Well, there's a bird sanctuary in East Essex, very close by, so it doesn't need another one. But she's sort of thinking there's got to be more lateral thinking about what happens with aggregate. So the other sources were screened out really because of they said there was too much energy consumption, there was to be too much noise, too much traffic, too much air degradation of the air quality. So basically they were engineering their other sources, or screening them out so that Goodwins would win, because it was the cheapest alternative. That was the bottom line. It was the cheapest alternative. And they'd done it before, so they thought they could do it again. And I think they got a bit of a surprise when they realised the amount of opposition. And in fact, they've had to get some of their aggregate from elsewhere because they wanted to get going with the project, and we were making a nuisance of ourselves. And so they did have to get some of it from somewhere else.
So the project has begun then?
The project has begun. It's actually stalled. What they had, part of the project was to build some new berths for cargo ships and cruise ships, and then they've also created a new marina. Unfortunately, they've got problems with the marina, and it's not fit for purpose. And the boats nobody will put their boats in there because there's such a huge swell when you get more than a force 4 wind that they're all bobbing around on their pontoons. So we were told last year that they were going to whatever they had to do for the marina to make it fit for purpose, and it would be ready by Easter this year. Well, I heard a couple of weeks ago now that all these capital projects have been put on hold until next year because of the current economic problems. They've got there's much less ferries going into the port. The cruise ships are there, but they've got no passengers on them. So they've got to sort out the new marina so that the yachts can go from the old marinas, which they want to fill into the new marina. So we don't really know what's happening with the project now. We were told maybe dredging might not start till 2022, but it's all hearsay and we don't know. But we have 2 representatives in what they've got an advisory group. We've got 2 representatives, one for archaeology and one for nature. So we have got ears on the ground. but they don't know any more than we do about what's happening at the moment.
I see. Tell us about the trust and why you decided to set it up.
Yeah, the trust is proving really popular, actually. So we realised during our campaign that the Crown Estate, who owns the seabed, as you'll know, they have eyed up the Goodwins as a source of aggregate. I can't remember the exact figures, but it was something like £40 million worth of business. I can't quite remember exactly. I should have looked. Anyway, which made us realise that, and we knew that if Dover Harbour Board got their dredging licence, that would set a good precedent, and they'd be able to, sell the sand to other developers. So we thought, oh gosh, we can't be going through this. We spent 4.5 years on this, and going all through this again. So we thought we've got to think of a way of making the Goodwins much more aware, bring them up back into the public awareness, so that people, if another application, people come up and say, you can't do that. The historic England have been awful in this. They should have said right at the beginning, 5-6 years ago, you can't dredge somewhere like the Goodwins. They've got so many shipwrecks, World War II aircrafts. It's a no-no, but they weren't. They've been hopeless. So the idea of the trust was to just publicise the Goodwins. We want people to think of them as much the White Cliffs of Dover. You wouldn't dream of quarrying the White Cliffs of Dover. They're such a part of our national psyche. And although most people know the Goodwins, they know where they are or what they are, they don't know what, the amount of cultural significance. I mean, Turner's painted them, Shakespeare's written about them. They were very much part of our community here when at one time you'd seen 800 ships moored up in the Downs. So they were very much part of our community. So that's what we want to bring back, part of very much into people's consciousness. So we had lots of things planned for this year. Unfortunately, they've been put on hold, but never mind. I'm sure they'll happen at some stage. So we've launched our website, which has proved really popular, and we've got a stunning leaflet, which will be on display at museums and heritage landmarks. And we're going to have pop-up displays at local community events, and lots of information and leaflets, and like a handling collection, people who've found things on the beach that have come from wrecks. So we'll have that. There's a local photographer who we were going to have an exhibition he was going to go out in a helicopter and photograph the sands, with all crashing over them. And we were going to do that in the autumn, but that's going to have to go on hold till next year because poor chap's fighting to survive.
I've seen pictures of seals lying out on the sand. It's so wonderful.
I know. You can't actually get close to them because they're terribly shy. And although they will come around the water, if you're walking on the sands, they'll all be bobbing up. Their heads will be bobbing up around your boat. When they haul out on the sand, if you try to walk towards them, they'll all just slither straight into the sea. But from a helicopter, you can get some lovely photos.
Is there a big population of seals there? Yeah,
it's about, so the Zoological Society of London do a survey every year, and last year they counted about 550 grey and harbour seals. They don't all rest there all the year round, but in August when they do the survey, there's usually the most number there. And so there's great concerns about what effect the dredging will have on them. The underwater noise and the disturbance, and although Dover Harbour Board say very well, we're taking a chunk of sand from one part. The currents are so strong there that the sand is going to be pushed down to fill the hole that is made from they don't know where. Nobody's done that research as to where the sand will move, and they are doing an exclusion zone of 1 kilometre from one of the seal haul out sites, but they've conveniently removed the second one off the map because they knew that an exclusion zone around it would make dredging impossible because it would go straight into the dredge zone. And that's one of the things our nature representative is going to push home to them, that although the second site is smaller, it's still a natural habitat, and seals are very loyal. They'll go back to where the one that they always go to. They're very loyal to their own habitat, so they don't sort of shift around much. So the one thing we're doing now is we're working with our MP, who, like us, has realised how useless the MCZs are. And she's come up with this idea of creating a site of special marine interest, which would be the equivalent of a terrestrial SSSI. site of special scientific interest, which would really mean there's a higher threshold for commercial developers, that they, higher threshold of regulations, I suppose, that they've got to leap through, just to make it more difficult for them to dredge and hopefully make them think twice about it. Because the Crown Estate don't really care. We've had endless contact with them, and they just don't seem to care. It's money. It's what they're all about, not protecting the environment.
That's interesting. I would have thought the environmental impact assessment would kind of balance out the environmental cost and the
the trouble with the environmental impact assessment is that it's paid for and commissioned by the developer, and the companies that do them, they want to please the developer. They don't want to say to the developer, this is too difficult or this is not possible. And so it's biased. It's biased towards enabling it to things to happen. I mean, this one, all the way through, it says, it cites the problems. There are shipwrecks, there are seals, there are World War II crash sites, but it's fine. They won't be in the dredge zone. And in fact, the first survey they did, they picked up just 9. They're called targets or anomalies, so they're things on the seabed which aren't natural. And they picked up just 9 in what was about a 4 square kilometre area, and you just went, what? It's just, that's so unlikely with 2,000 shipwrecks and stuff. So this is when we really started making a noise, and in the end, Historic England said to them, you've got to redo it and you've got to do it better. Came back with over 300 targets in the same area.
From 9 to 300?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know.
And the same area?
In the same area, yes.
Okay.
And I mean, so we've since discovered that, so they've moved the dredge zone, they moved it slightly east to make it really long and narrow, so that the majority of the targets were actually on the edge of the bank, which makes sense because if the ships are being driven onto the sands, they'll all end up actually on the edge of the bank. But so they moved the dredge zone. We've since discovered that actually, if they had dredged, they would have dredged through probably 2 or 3 aircraft and a very old steamship that our divers have subsequently found in what was the dredge zone. They would have gone straight through those. So we've achieved something. There's still over 50 targets left in the dredge zone, and Dover Harbour have got no idea what they are. They are proposing to put in measly 25-metre exclusion zones around them, which are totally inadequate to protect them. So we're still really very much fighting. We know we can't stop the dredging, probably. And so all we can do now is to really make a fuss and say, you've got to put bigger exclusion zones around everything that's left. And you've also actually got to go down and dive them and see what they are before you start dredging, because they haven't got a clue what's there.
Yes, especially going forward, I think a strong baseline is very important to be able to compare changes over the years. And
yes. I mean, they did another survey last year because there's obviously been 3 years. They did a bathymetric survey, how the sand has changed, and it's definitely moved from west to east, which is what the sands do, because they sort of go round anti-clockwise. So, the sand, it moves every time and all the time. And we have divers, who go down and they say, one tide you can see what you're looking for, and then the next tide you'll go down and it's been completely covered in sand. So it's quite frustrating, but it's infuriating that Dover just not taking it more, just not being more responsible, really. They just, I don't know. You know more about developers than we do.
I don't know. I'm finding out. I suppose the pressure to build and the pressure to improve the economy is huge. So I guess there is, unless the incentives or unless the alternatives are, right up in front and center, it's hard to make the right choice, I suppose. I don't know. We're finding out. We'll find out more.
And I think the issue with here is they didn't budget for an alternative. They just said, right, we know that we can get the Goodwins. I mean, we're fairly sure that the MMO, the Marine Management Organisation, said to them it's not going to be a problem, because they applied for a licence 4 months before they wanted to start dredging, and with commercial sites it takes 2 years to process
Wow.
So, they thought they were going to get a shoe in there. And they made no alternative plans for their budget, for timing, for looking elsewhere. They just assumed that they would be able to get the Goodwins. And I think developers, they need to do that. And the MMO is weak. That is also the problem. And they rely on the statutory advisors, who are also weak. The whole system needs a really, really good shake-up.
What do you mean when you say weak?
Well, like historic England didn't stop and say, come on, guys, there's 2,000 shipwrecks, 80 aircraft. This area should be left alone. I mean, Natural England, who'd been involved in the whole MCZ progress, for them to say it's fine to dredge for protected habitat. I mean, where's that coming from? It's just, it's so contradictory, and nobody wants to say no. And we were told it's the blue growth versus the blue belt. So it's the blue growth agenda versus the blue belt, and it's making money out of the ocean, and that's more important than preserving it.
Interesting. So how can people help?
So how can people help? Well, they can join in with what we're doing, really. They can subscribe to our newsletter. They can join us on Facebook. We've got a really active Facebook group where people post lovely stories about the sands and the ships, and what they found on the beaches, which have come from shipwrecks. They can visit our displays if they're in Kent sometime. We're publicising them. They could invite us to give presentations about the Goodwins and what we've been doing and what we want to do. They could sign up. Well, not sign up, but we often have research projects that we need people to find out specific research. Like for the MP, we've got 2 people doing research for something that she asked to do, and we really need IT support. That's what I'm in a big need of, somebody to sort of hold my hand a bit with social media and newsletters and things like that. But but it's interesting. People are different sorts of people are up for the trust from the campaign. People who felt they couldn't put their name to the campaign are really behind us with the trust. I suppose it's much more positive. It's not controversial, but we're really pleased with the results, the feedback that we've had so far. Although we haven't really got going yet, which is quite frustrating.
Yes, I imagine COVID-19 has had a huge impact on.
Well, we were having, we were doing 2 community events here in Walmer. This month, May, we're meant to be doing. And it'd be great just to get face to face with people, as opposed to just, most of it's doing a petition and internet. It's all been internet based, so it'd be great to meet people and talk to them.
Yes.
And everybody's got a story to tell, especially local people have all got stories to tell.
Yes, it would be so wonderful to speak to them and record what they have to say and stuff like that.
Yeah, well,
I think it's such a rich cultural heritage.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we wanted to do an oral history project, and actually that's again we need somebody to take that on, because as you will know, I mean, just doing the admin and emails and chasing people, and I mean, I probably spend 4 or 5 hours a day doing it.
Pretty full on.
It is a lot. I mean, I really enjoy it, and if I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing something else. But we do need people, to come in and help them do bits and pieces. But people love it, and we've got I don't know about divers are an interesting bunch. I've learnt they're very secretive, and we tried to get in touch with divers when we first started the campaign. Say, do you know what's down there? Because this is what we felt we needed to find, and we still need to find a shipwreck or an aircraft crash site in the middle of the dredge zone, because we think that just put a complete end to it. The ones on the side, the MMO said, doesn't matter, they're on the side. I mean, the thinking is just so narrow-minded. So the divers, we had no luck with the divers until about 2 months after they'd granted the license, and I was away on holiday, and I suddenly got a text from a diver saying, I know where there's 2 aircraft crash sites. And he sent me pictures of them. And I just went, why didn't you tell us this? But they're very secretive, and they're all terribly worried that other people will go and dive their sites if they're publicised. So this chap has been amazing actually since then, and he's come on board, and and when it's a nice day, he'll just go out and dive. And we met him, Fiona, my colleague, and I, we met him over coffee, gosh, about 2 years ago, I suppose now. And he suddenly got up and said, "I've got to go." And off he went. And about 4 hours later, he sent us through a video, and he'd gone down to one of the targets that we'd said to him, "We think this is really interesting." And he'd gone down, he found a plane engine and a propeller and a part of the wing, just, sitting on the seabed.
Wow.
And he's been great, and he's gone out, and we were trying to find other targets, and they're all scattered around the place. And he's found the iron tank of a ship. So the photo I sent you was of a young chap called Keith Gilman, who was in the Battle of Britain. He was just 19 when he was shot down in his Hurricane in the middle of August 1940, and his family still live near Dover, and we've been in touch with them. Unfortunately, they can't talk on the public record. I don't know who they work for, but they're not been allowed not to talk to us. We found the relatives of two other guys. One who died during the Battle of Dunkirk, evacuation of Dunkirk. So we're going to do a big thing about him, because that's obviously coming up. Dunkirk started on the 27th of May, I think, tomorrow. And he was killed on the 29th. So that's his 80th anniversary coming up. So we're going to do a big thing about him. And his relative came down, his nephew, and did a programme with BBC South East. And we went out and did the filming, and he threw a wreath into the sea. And that was great. And there's lots of old what they call deal boatmen, the old fishermen who used to go out and do rescues. They're all getting on a bit now, but there's quite a few people that would be worth talking to. So if we could get the Oral History Project off the ground, that would be good.
Great. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your interest,
It's been
Karen.
such a pleasure.